Hi guys, and welcome to week 5. I don't know if you guys have been waiting for it, but this is our first week that we get to actually animate, so I'm very excited. You do have 2 assignments this week. One is a walk cycle, and you'll just be giving me your Maya file. And then the other one is coming up with an idea of what action you want to loop and do kind of for your final. So make sure to pay attention to both of those, as well as the discussion board. For this video, I'm going to use a rig called Mike and Tina. It's currently in the Mike position, but just so you can kind of see what a rig looks like and all of the different controllers. It gets really pretty complicated, but it is nice to be able to grab with controllers and get a lot of different rotation, translate, and all of that. I do want you to use your models. They've been coming along really nicely. I know it's time consuming and kind of buggy, but you guys are doing a great job, so feel free to let me know if you have any questions, but look forward to seeing you animate with your own rigs. These are taken from the Animator's Survival Kit by Richard Williams. I think it's a really good book if you have interest in animation, whether it's 2D or 3D. He really explains things very to the point and down to earth. But I found just 3 images from it on Google that kind of go over our key poses that we need. Now, you can time out a walk to be whatever you think. Some people have very slow walks, some people have very fast walks. Just don't forget that there are 24 frames in a second. So if we've got, this is 2 steps in 25 frames, that is a very, very fast walk. So you do not have to follow this at all. You can kind of create your own timing. But what you are going to follow is this contact, down, passing, and up positions. This is listed in your assignment sheet as well. It kind of tells you what to look for. Now, you guys will be doing a looping animation. Generally, we want to pay attention to the foot that you're placing, and it's going to never move from that spot. Okay, because if you're moving forward, you transfer your weight to the heel, and then it becomes flat. But because we're doing a looping cycle, the main thing that you're going to want to think of is always keeping your character centered. So I like to make sure that our grid is always showing, and think about it, if you're going to move a foot forward, that's the whole body, we want a foot. If you're going to move a foot forward, okay, we have to split our weight, right? I mean, if he were going to point his toe, but because his foot is flat, we want him to actually be centered over that foot. So you'll move him forward, but now I've left the center of the grid. So you want to make sure, no matter what your position is, that you are centered over that 0, 0, 0 mark. So I'm going to actually want to move, my character back, and I'm going to move this foot back and try to get the same positioning that I'm looking for, but centered over the grid. Okay, because what he's going to do with his walk cycle is it's going to be like he's on a treadmill. Okay, just taking steps and sliding through this position. A lot of times with a walk cycle, you can choose to do kind of the feet first, get down your timing, and then add the arms to it. If it's easier for you to set up key poses and make it look exactly like you want, that works as well. You're generally going to set these 4 key poses, your contact, down, passing, up, contact, etc. repeated. You're going to want to set those, but it's important that you realize that each of these controllers has their own timeline. So for example, if I set his foot and I hit S on the keyboard to set a key, that means at this time and space, at 1 frame, this foot will always be there. And then if I go forward, let's say it's going to take till frame 10 to do something. If I move that up and hit S on the keyboard, you can see the red line, so it set a key. You need 2 keyframes to make any movement happen. If any of you are new to animation, please let me know. We can go over a little bit more in depth what has to happen for setting keys or animating. I think most of you are new to doing it in Maya, but please again let me know if you're new to it completely. But we have a lot of controllers here to deal with, right? So it's going to be a pain to remember, like, you know, let's say I set up this great position. Who knows what I'm actually setting up, but whatever. So I set up this awesome, oops, can't see what's actually moving here. Okay, I've set up this awesome positioning, and then I'm like, shoot, I don't remember what I set keys on. Did I set this foot? Did I move this one and set it? So what I like to do is create a selection set to start with. So what you'll do is select every controller, and sometimes, depending on what rig, you might have to hold shift and actually go in there and make sure you've selected each one. But then we can go to create, sets, quick select set. We'll call it, you know, character, whatever you want. And then I'm going to do add to shelf. Okay, and you can see this little button right here, character. So now, whenever I create an awesome position that I want to make sure that I'm keeping, you know, whatever, I've adjusted a bunch of different sections, let's say, I can then click on my character button, it grabs all the controllers, and I can hit S to set the key. You can do this along the way. I mean, feel free to still select them as you go if you're like, okay, I'm at frame 13 and I know that this needs to rotate. Oh, not that. His arm needs to rotate, or you can set that separately. But just know, again, every controller has its own timeline. What I did his arm. But so you can see I only have the keyframe at 1 where I set it all for that. The feet, I've got one at 1 and 10. Alright? To add frames to your timeline, you can actually click on these to zoom out, these little boxes. But we can type in here the number of frames that we want. So now you have plenty to. Now, if you can make, you know, for ours you won't need 200 frames. You're just doing 2 steps because it's a looped walk cycle. So you won't need to do more than that because it should start exactly where it finished. So you can decide, you know, if you want to do a second per step, that would be 48 frames. Again, you can, we'll put 48 here too. So that's our maximum frame count here, and this is the frame count that we're looking at. Yeah, so 2 steps. You can decide how fast you want it to be. When you're actually playing back your animation, there are a couple options that we can look at, but if you right mouse click on your timeline and go to playback speed, we want real time. Okay? Play every frame is kind of used for dynamics when Maya has to take into account the frame before it to understand what's happening. But we want real time, 24 frames per second. All right? So just a few notes on what makes a good walk cycle. So you want to look at the head. We can see in these images here that when you go, you know, down and up, your head is going to actually make kind of like a sine wave. Now, with a walk and, you know, maybe take a few steps around where you are, it doesn't have to be huge. It's not going to be dramatic. When you start to get a huge wave here, that's when it's very like a schlumped kind of walk, up and down and slow. So you want this to happen, but you don't need it to be quite as up and down. Your down position here is going to be when your arms are the furthest out, and it's kind of like your center pose. All right, when we're in our passing, you can see that we've got, you know, all of our weight is going to be on the leg that's on the ground, but you want to make sure not to lose your arms. So I always like to have one arm forward a little bit and one arm back a little bit in my passing pose. If you get them both straight in a line, when you play your animation, you're not going to be able to tell which arm is now coming forward. It'll start to look like, you know, your back arm is constantly forward, center, forward, center, forward, center, instead of going back. Also take note at the lean or the line of action. Technically, running and walking is kind of like tripping and catching yourself. So you are going to have a slight forward lean to every positioning you have here. Again, if you were going to do an extreme fast run, you would really exaggerate that lean further, but for a nice casual walk, we're just going to give it a slight lean. All right? Make sure to check for your knees popping. Seems to be kind of an easy mistake that when you're bending and kind of bringing it through, depending upon your locators, that becomes a little bit of an issue. All right, I just wanted to show you this quick little movie on your walk cycles.
Let's talk about walk cycles. A walk cycle is a looping animation of a walking character, which starts with the first foot, goes to the second foot, and ends back on the first foot. We're going to cover run cycles in the next video since there is just so much to cover with just walk cycles. So walk cycles can be scary for beginning animators because it seems like there are so many poses to memorize. But if you break it down into simpler components, it becomes much easier to wrap your head around. So instead of thinking of a walk cycle as 12 different poses to memorize, think of it as 2 poses. The first pose is called the contact pose because it is where the foot contacts the ground. The second pose is called the passing pose because it is where the other foot directly passes the first foot. To complete the cycle, we need to repeat these 2 poses and reverse them in order to let both feet take a step. So just from these 4 drawings, we already feel like the character is walking. We could call this done. But in order to make the walk cycle more realistic, there are 2 more poses that we should add, called the up and down poses. These are where the head is highest and where it's lowest in the cycle. The down pose happens right after the contact pose, and the up pose happens after the passing pose. If we didn't add these poses, the walk would look very flat, with no bounce at all. So if you're just starting out, it's okay to just use 2 poses, but know that ultimately there are 4 poses that go into each step of a walk cycle. When making a character walk across a screen, some people will make the walk cycle first and move the cycle across the screen. While this will save you some work, it can sometimes look mechanical and slidey, like a video game character. A better solution is to hold the cycle in place and have the background move instead. Otherwise, you would animate the whole sequence from start to finish. This gives you the most control. It's important to map out where you want each step to take place and space them out evenly, both on the stage as well as on the timeline. Drawing someone walking across the screen can be one of the most annoying things to animate if it's not organized well. Place the contact poses first, add the passing poses, and then fill in the up and down poses. The arms can be added at the same time as the legs, or they can be added afterwards to simplify and isolate each process. The arms are farthest apart from each other on the down pose, and closest together on the passing pose. They should be opposite to the legs, meaning the right arm is in front when the right leg is in back, and vice versa. You can also have the arms doing whatever you want throughout the walk. Just put the main poses in first and fill in the in-betweens. When animating a walk cycle from the front, the same rules apply, except the 2 poses you want to draw first are now the up and down poses, because these are more clearly distinguishable from the front compared to the passing and contact poses. Personality can be added to a walk cycle by adjusting a few factors. These factors include timing, position, and offset. To give our character a sad, depressed walk, let's hunch him forward, make his contact pose and down pose take much longer, and droop his arms down low. His up and down poses should be close in height to take away the bounce. To give our character a happy, proud walk, let's lean his body back and change the timing to emphasize his contact pose and bring his arms way up. Then let's offset his arm movement so that they are 2 frames ahead of the legs.
Alright, so I wanted to show you this so you can kind of get excited about what we're doing. There is a lot of different ways, and we're not moving it forward, but I did want you to be aware of the differences. So this week, again, you'll be turning in your Maya file. I do want to see this resolution gate set up so that you can tell, where your walk cycle, how you're framing it. You will be, mainly focusing from a side view, but you do want to check your front to make sure that it's actually working as best as possible. Your arms and legs should always be opposite, which you think, you've been walking for how long, you understand, but sometimes it gets a little confusing. You can always, I just always take a few steps when I'm at my desk, do a little bit of animation, take a few steps, see where my hands go, see what my fingers are doing, what is my shoulder doing, what are my hips doing, all of that. So let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing your walk cycles.